I'm joined by Magnus Carlsen here in the Take post-game booth after the first quarterfinal of the 2025 Freestyle Grand Slam Tour. You came in, you said that was surprising. To me, it felt like a very smooth game, to quote Maurice Ashley.
Yeah, I think for once it was. I just, gained an advantage very early on, and I think I didn't really give him any major chances. You don't get a lot of games like this, but obviously I'll take him when I can.
Was there anything he could have done differently? Obviously, we'll take a look at the specifics, but it really felt like once you kind of consolidated, it was quite tough for Black, and he never found his footing. Yeah,
I think that's what it was about. I think it was frustrating for him to see that I had like a really nagging advantage from like 4 or 5 moves on, and it feels like all of his attempts to break out are sort of doomed to fail, specifically because his queen is really his queen is inactive and mine is active, which is the biggest difference there. And then you kind of have to dig in and defend, but that's also not so easy to do when there's a saying in chess, like when in a bad position there are only bad choices, right? So I think it felt for him that every choice sort of made his position worse, and I don't think he found the best way to fight, but it was very, very hard for him. I was in good form today, and I was not going to let it go.
Maybe we go through, let's say, 3 critical moments, just so we don't have an hour of analysis.
Yeah, of course.
You went into the confessional and you said, actually, even from the beginning, like move 1, I noticed that it's very common when the rook is trapped, you don't defend it anymore oftentimes. Like both sides are okay kind of accepting it, but I'm not sure if that's the correct analysis.
So I feel like I've seen almost the exact same position before, or something very similar. I think I had something very similar against Nepo in the first Freestyle Friday tournament, but then the king was on the other side, and I was trying to think, is there a difference? And my first thought was, I think in that game, if I'm not completely mistaken, then you could reply to f4 with castling.
Yeah.
And then it actually took me a second to realize why that is not legal on the other side. And then what other differences are there, which I didn't really completely appreciate at first, but he actually, as I talked about in the confession, like he actually helped me quite a lot, because when we get to, first of all, I think what the other guys did with knight b6 is probably a better move. I had some ideas of playing a bit differently than they did, but I'm not sure it would have been that great. So here, as you say, this does indeed happen quite often in freestyle. So we have this, and here he took my rook, which at first seemed absolutely puzzling. Like, why would you take a rook that's trapped? The thing is, after he took it, when your opponent makes a decision which you think is puzzling, like you stop to think, what am I missing? And it was only then that I realized that the rook can actually escape. So, for instance, his most natural move, I would still reply with g3, trying to attack this with the queen. And if he defends it, then I give a check. And as far as I could see, this is a legal move.
Yeah.
And I still thought maybe he could have played like this. Like, I don't know, knight b6, played for an attack somehow, but I wasn't sure if it would work. And I think his thought process was more along the lines of, well, I don't want to give up an exchange. Let me play the other way, even if it doesn't look fantastic. But I don't know, maybe this was a chance to completely change the nature of the game, because after what he did here, then I obviously, like, often in freestyle, when you start with a queen in the corner, that's sort of red alert. Like, you got to get that queen out. Otherwise, if things are happening on the other side of the board, you could be basically playing a queen down, which especially with all other things being equal, is a very big deal. So here, this I guess was an option, but I think again with the queen passive here, the diagonal not yet opened, it feels like his light squares are just way too weak. So we went on. Obviously, since he has no threat of escaping with the rook yet by castling, I just play logical moves. Knight e3. This one I liked a lot, actually.
So an interesting thing here, after knight e3, we were looking at like, okay, bishop c7 or bishop b6, because bishop c7 he's threatening to castle, but you don't have to do anything.
I wasn't gonna do anything.
Yeah.
Like Nodirbek mentioned it like briefly after the game, but I think here in this position, like I go queen a4 and I'm attacking, and I think I have more than enough compensation. I mean, honestly,
3 and knight d5 as well. You have like all
yeah,
these,
I kind of have everything, and you just have to look at the queen on h8 to know that this is going to be good for white. And the idea here also of playing knight e3 instead of knight b3, which I think may have been an important point, is that he really wants to get his knight here. But now I just go attacking the knight, and the knight doesn't have this square because it's covered by the knight, so it has to return, and then of course it's really, really bad for him.
Yeah, his rook, and then
so he went for this, but obviously now his knight is in bad shape. So I'm not sure this move is great either, but let me just jump to, because I think there was only, I mean, here there were other options as well, but I kind of liked this, getting the bishop out of the way and then preparing to bring the rook into the game. Also, his pawn is quite weak. This was, I think, the best chance that he had. Knight f6 here, queen f7 here. And here I think he obviously hadn't played his best game so far, but this is the only moment which I thought was like borderline unforgivable for him, because he played knight d7 almost immediately with 50 minutes on the clock, and this move just loses very trivial, like without any fight whatsoever, and he still had some chances of holding by making this move. I'm sure the position is objectively lost, but here I would have at least have had to calculate a few lines. For instance, I could have gone here, knight a5, knight d8, because rook b8 is met by knight takes c6. So he goes here, and again, I suspect I'm winning, but I was
some rook
lift. I still had to prove it a little bit. Maybe I could even go here. My position is completely dominant, so it's no question that I have at the very least a very big advantage. But this is where he could potentially thrive, right? Because the position might at some point become tactical. I'm older, I'm getting low on time at some point. Well, after this move, I barely had to think at all. The only thing that I just needed to do, like, there are many ways to win, I think, but this is the Swift is just attacking his knight, which basically cannot be defended. I actually thought instead of this, he would try this as a sort of last ditch try. And then takes, and here I think the only thing I have to worry about is that I should probably recapture the pawn, because if I take this one, then he goes d3 check and king d2, queen b7, and this move is no longer possible. So I would just take here, and then I think the game is over. But yeah, after what he
it felt like, but like I said, it somehow felt like it was always spiraling for him.
It did, and this was kind of the definition of a spike check. And But yeah, I mean, I think he never felt comfortable. He never really found his footing in the game at all, and I think by the end he was just really sick of the position that he had, and was not unhappy to be done with it.
We saw some players, including you actually, on like the first few moves, looking up. Just, I don't know if it's at the screens or just kind of seeing what everybody's doing. And I was sort of wondering, who do you think is, who would you trust to handle the position the right way? Because around move 5-6, everybody ends up taking their own direction. Like somebody keeps the bishop more active, somebody goes a different way. Is it kind of annoying that you don't actually know the solutions, but you have like a bunch of people doing their own interpretation?
Well, I'm mostly curious to see what they're doing. I trust my own judgment more than
shocking,
more than the others. But you want some information, of course. And I have there was an interview with Hikaru yesterday where he talked about that he really liked what Fabi was doing in the opening. And when I saw Hikaru copying Fabi's plan with this bishop d5, queen g8 stuff, I was thinking for a minute, like, I'm not sure this is Hikaru thinking, but maybe he's just trusting Fabi. But yeah, it's interesting to see the way that move one, everybody sort of agrees. At the end of the day, like when you learn chess, you learn that you have to grab the center, like you have to develop quietly, like you don't go for the throat immediately. But in these cases, like when there's a move where you can sort of make an aggressive pawn move and threaten something significant on the first move, even with everything we learned, I think there's such a magnetism about a move like that we find it really, really hard to resist. I cannot imagine that is a bad move, but I think we often get humbled looking at engine evaluations afterwards and realizing that there was probably a lot more to it than we thought.
When players yesterday were choosing their opponents for the quarterfinals, you didn't have a choice of opponent, but I think you had the choice of color, right? You could choose whether to start with white or black.
Yeah.
3 people chose white, Fabi chose black. Generally, in like a World Cup of chess, it's kind of better to start with black. And at least on the second day, yeah, maybe not. That's also a question.
No, well, we've had a lot of Champions Chess Tour events where whenever I get the chance, unless there is some opponent whom I don't, maybe there are occasional opponents whom I don't feel like I'm like really punishing that often with white. Maybe I feel like I can counterattack with black in the first game, like that would not be a bad idea. But I generally try to land the first punch with these short matches. That's so important. And I, especially against somebody like Nodirbek, who's not the most solid, like he generally always gives you chances. I really, really wanted to go after him in the first game. So for me, that was an absolute no-brainer. Fabi, I don't know. I think last year he probably beat Kukesh, and I don't know. I think he probably beat Kukesh as black in the first game. So we was keen on doing that again, but. For me, the choice was easy.
What can we expect tomorrow?
I think it will be a lot harder. Of course, you don't really get these knockout wins ever really as black. So I'm expecting there to be a serious fight, as there always is in Nodirbek games. And if I'm feeling like I'm feeling today, then I'll be ready for it.
Thank you, Magnus.